everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our first night of Virtually Starlight for our Hello Dolly Week. We are so excited to join you guys tonight and to kick off this week. My name is Becca Jensen. I am one of the assistant directors for Little Mermaid this summer and next summer for our season worth waiting for. We are so excited to join you guys, and I'm going to hand this right over to Joe because tonight is Joe Knows. So here's our very own Joe Coots.
Hi,
Ladies and
Starlight.
gentlemen. There we go.
Friends, lovers.
All right.
Thank you, Becca. You're the
You
best.
bet. Have fun tonight.
I will. I'm going to do my best. Tonight, I'm really excited because tonight for Virtual Starlight, we have one of my dearest friends, one of the people that's been my biggest influence on my career that I've looked up to for many years, but she's also, over the course of the last 2.5 years, became my Earth Mother. And I just so honored, so beyond honored to have her with us tonight. And so, Starlight, I would like to welcome to you our dear friend, two-time Emmy Award winner and Golden Globe winner, America's sweetheart, icon, Miss Sally Struthers.
Hi, Joseph Daniel Coots, my Earth son. I only gave birth to one person, a daughter, and I always wanted a son, and there you are. When we did the full Monty together and I met you, that was it. You're mine for life. You're stuck.
That was it. I'll never forget you coming up to me and being like, "Are you Scottish and English?" I'm like, I don't know. And you look just like my father did at his age. And I'll never forget as long as I live.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that was at the Ogunquit Playhouse in Ogunquit, Maine. And it was the first day of rehearsal. And I met you, and I had to stop myself from crying because I was looking at a young version of my father. So I went home that night from rehearsal, and I called my sister in Portland, Oregon, and I said, please find some pictures of Dad when he was in his 30s and send them to me. And I gave her the address in Ogunquit, Maine, and I showed you the pictures. And I'm sure you didn't see the similarity yourself, but I see it.
I noticed the equal handsomeness. I saw that much.
Yes, equal handsomeness. Yes, and my dad was very handsome.
I love it. I can't believe you're sitting on your couch. I lived at Sally's house for 2.5 years on and off. And we used to call that couch, which is for those that you can't see, it's like a U-shaped couch. And we used to call it the zone of safety.
Yeah. We could say anything that we were thinking because we're family.
Yeah.
And some of it was politically incorrect. Some of it was very personal.
Zone of safety.
It was our zone of safety to air our thoughts and our feelings and a lot of impropriety.
Yeah, a lot of impropriety. Well, Struthers, I cannot thank you enough for joining us tonight. We got a bunch of questions, so we're going to start going forward, and I'm sure we'll kind of get off our list and we'll riff and vent and just I haven't seen you now, babe. I haven't seen your face. Well, we've FaceTimed before, but I haven't seen. It's been a while, so I'm really, really excited to see you. I'm excited.
Yeah, we used to live together, and then you had the nerve to move back to New York City.
We lived together, and I lived in the guest house, and every morning I'd wake up and it'd be the LA Times sports section in the door from Miss Struthers. It was like, yes.
I learned that from my mother. My mom and dad and my sister and me, when I was very little, moved into the house that I grew up in on Portland Boulevard in Portland, Oregon, because my aunt and uncle, my mom's baby sister and her husband, Uni and Walter Torkelson, called my mom and dad one day and said, the house next door is for sale. You got to come buy it and be our next door neighbor. And then a few years later, my mother's other sister, her older sister, Yaya, bought the house on the other side. So the three sisters lived in 3 houses in a row on Portland Boulevard. And my aunt Yaya, they didn't want to spend for 3 newspapers. They didn't have to. Yaya would read the newspaper first, and then she would send it over to June's house next. And June would read it and circle things of interest for my mother. And then my mother got the newspaper third. It was just perfect. And with you out in the guest house and being such a sports maniac, I had to leave you the sports section every day.
It was the best. I loved it. And you're actually an under the cover sports maniac yourself. You just don't talk about it much, but you're pretty up. I'm pretty impressed by you.
Yeah, thank you so much for not having a Struthers brother.
I love it.
I'm very sports minded and having absolutely no hand-on coordination. I flunked tennis in high school, but I did figure out I could run. So I created the women's track team of my high school in 1962. Yes,
Wow.
do the math. I will be
Nice.
73 the end of this month.
I lost my abacus on the shelf there. I don't know where it is, but I'm sitting by a golf course. Reminds me of you because you're such a great golfer.
Oh, well, yeah, that's another one of my gifts. My mother took me golfing when I was 10 at a golf course at the beach in Oregon because I didn't have anything to do and I was moping around. She said, "You want to go golfing with Aunt June and me today? We'll teach you how to golf." So I got a 36 on the first hole. And my mother said, "I am going to teach you to be the best caddy in the world." So for the rest of the 9 holes, I was a caddy.
Oh, you're the cutest caddy. Well, Sally, as I told you before, Starlight Theater, they're doing, well, there's this thing called COVID-19 coronavirus. I don't know if you heard about it. It's been in the news a little bit.
Yeah.
But most of these theaters that, Sally and I, side note, we'll get to this later, we're actually supposed to be together with each other in Maine right now doing Crazy for You. Obviously, that's not happening. And just like Starlight Theater in Rockford, Illinois, is not happening. But they're going to do them next year. So this year they're going to do Dreamgirls, Disaster, Little Mermaid, and this little show that you might have heard of called Hello, Dolly. And so when Christopher Brady, the artistic director, came to me and said, "Hey, how would you like to help with this?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I think I know people that have been involved with all those shows, those productions." And the first one when Hello, Dolly popped up was you. Because I can't think of anybody else who's played Dolly more than you. And I saw you do it. And it's literally a breathtaking experience. It's a masterpiece in theater. I cried, I laughed, and it was simply amazing. So before we get into that, everybody knows your name. You are an American icon. You're an American treasure. I don't look at you like that because I look at you as my Earth mom. But everybody that I know, you're a household name. Everybody in the world knows who you are.
Except for the people who murder my name.
Except for the people.
And the people who call me a completely wrong person when they know me.
Sally Fields. You get that
I have a lot of times people come up and say, "Aren't you Sally Field?" I go, "You are so close." And I had this very large woman in Disney World 20 years ago. And she looked like she was right out of Central Casting. She actually had Wagnerian braids across her head. And she spotted me from 200 feet away and she yelled in an operatic voice, "Oh, look, there's Sally Strudel." Of course, it didn't help that I got started on television as a regular on the Smothers Brothers show. And people thought I made up Struthers to go with Smothers Brothers. I get called Struggle, Smothers. Every year, I get at least 1 to 2 letters from the United Negro College Fund addressed to Sally Struthers.
All right. Let's get. We could go on. I feel like I'm sitting in a Circle of Trust couch right now. It's weird.
Yes. Okay.
We're 1,000 miles apart.
I'm trying so hard to be appropriate. Okay.
No, it's us two to get together. I don't know how many people are watching, but it's like I don't care who's watching. It's just like we're back to normal. Anyway.
Well, here's who I hope is watching.
Yeah, I think
I hope that the artistic director, the director that you just spoke about, Christopher.
Yeah, Christopher Brady.
I don't know why he's not on camera.
He's a chump. That's why.
He's a chump.
He decided to take vacation. Yeah, he decided he works so many hours. He has to take a vacation with his beautiful wife and his 2 little daughters on a camping trip where there's no cell phone service. What a chump, right?
I think that's where he says he is, but he's actually at home watching this. And so glad to get out of his pajamas.
He's grown a beautiful mustache, so I'll give him that much.
But I just want to say hi to all the people in Rockford, Illinois, and the surrounding areas that are patrons of the Starlight Theater, and to all the Rock Valley College students who are members of the cast and the crew and make these shows work. I hope they're watching. I love you. Choosing to play in the theater or to make a life in the theater is highly rewarding. Sometimes very difficult, probably the very most difficult right now. during this pandemic where every theater on the face of the earth had to shut down. But it'll come back. So don't lose heart.
Don't lose heart.
I've lost my mind. It has turned to mush. I have been quarantined for 7 months. I broke my leg while I was doing the musical Annie in New Hampshire on December 4th. And a few weeks later, I completely blew out my lower back. So I've had 2 surgeries. And between the 2 hospitalizations and the quarantine in the hotel room in New Hampshire before the surgeon would let me fly from putting titanium in my leg, I've been indoors for 7 months. So if I stop speaking language as that you all understand it, just know that I'm not quite right in my head anymore.
Oh, well, 7 months, that's like a jail sentence. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So my dog, little Brad Kinney, is so happy at home.
Brad was named after a human, and he's a good friend of ours, the human and the dog. I personally like the dog better than the human. But that's just my opinion.
I hope that the human isn't watching this.
I'm going to send it to him. You damn right I will. Sal, real quick, you've been on this little tiny small hit called All in the Family. Not many people have never heard about it. It was literally one of the biggest iconic television shows of all time. I believe the set is in the Smithsonian. You played America's Sweetheart, and you've gone on and done 1,000 other television shows. I always love it when I'm with you and people recognize you from Gilmore Girls and Still Standing. And I just love that because like a younger generation that knows your work and is it with you. What are you pointing at?
A squirrel just went by.
Oh my gosh. We got to get you some ADD.
Yeah. Ooh, shiny object.
Yeah. What's happening? I don't have attention deficit. Is that a squirrel? Good scroll by? Anyway. So, of all your stuff on television and you still do theater all the time, what brings you more joy on stage? I mean, why do you always go back to the stage?
The stage, we'll pretend like this isn't the year 2020 and there isn't this virus. Let's just eradicate that for this interview. The stage is something that always welcomes you back. Right. Whereas when you're doing a film or you're doing a television series, it can get canceled and then all of a sudden you're not the flavor of the month anymore and you can't get arrested. You change agents. That's like changing deck chairs on the Titanic. And you hope for the best, but while you maybe can't get arrested in television for a few years, you can go back to the theater and they welcome you back with open arms. And if you've had success in the other venues and you have a face and a name people recognize, that helps to sell tickets in the theater. So then the theater really welcomes you back. So it's always been available for me in the most loving, wonderful way. And it's the way I started in college. I went to a theater college, and it's what I've always loved the most because it's not for sissies. There's no yelling cut and starting over. You have to do the show from beginning to end in one piece. And there are a lot of wonderful actors who make their living as gigantic movie stars, but they don't have the capacity to learn an entire script from beginning to end. They can learn their 3 pages of dialogue for one day of shooting, but don't ask them to go out on a stage and know an entire play or musical. They just can't and won't do it. Yeah. So I think it takes the strongest of us to come out on a stage and bare our souls for an audience for an hour to 2.5 hours without anyone helping you. It's like the Flying Wallendas who used to be this tightrope family and who never had a net.
Yeah.
And now you don't hear about them anymore because they should have had a net.
You're killing.
I know, it's zone of safety. Zone of safety.
Zone of safety. All right, let's talk about Dolly Levi. How'd you come in contact with Miss Dolly Levi? I
have a friend who is in the film with Barbra Streisand. His name is John Command, and he lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And he lived in Los Angeles for many years, and he decided to move back to Minnesota, and he started directing theater there. He's a dancer by trade, and he's an amazing gentleman. I love him to pieces. And he invited me to his theater in Minneapolis and said, come do Dolly Levi. And I said, oh, it's a really big role, isn't it? It just sounds like so much work. And he says, it's a couple of songs, a couple of skits. No problem. And I got to Minnesota and rehearsal started, and I said, oh my Lord, what have I gotten myself into? And the rehearsals, everybody else would go home at night and live their life. And people from the theater would come to where I was staying, and they would run lines with me until 1 a.m. It was so much to learn. But just as with anything that's a struggle to learn, you don't forget it because it was so difficult to learn.
Right.
And that performance went very well there. And then someone got word in another city that I had just played Dolly Levi, and I went to another city to do it. So I think I've played it in 5 or 6 different theaters now. And it's always fun because she's a real character. I was very disappointed that I didn't get a chance to play it on Broadway a couple of years ago when they brought it back around. I would love to have done it, but they had the indomitable Miss Bette Midler, and she's divine, as everyone knows. And then she left, and I think they brought in, I can't remember. See, much.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Should have been you from day one.
I wanted to do it very much.
Your
but
last time doing Dolly was on the last big tour, right?
I did a tour of it, thanks to you, Joe. You knew a gentleman who got in touch with me, and we made a deal. And
I apologize.
I went out on tour with it, and it just wasn't made clear to me that it was a tour of all one-nighters.
Yeah.
There was no sitting down anywhere for a week or a month. Every night after the show, you packed up your dressing room, you went to the bus, and you moved on. It was exhausting. And I was the oldest one on tour. I mean, it was obvious to me who was younger than I am. There were a few people that I thought, could they be my age? So I asked the truck drivers who drove the sets, some of the crew. I asked everybody and found out I was the oldest one of the 50, 60 people out with this production. And in those 7 months of doing all one-nighters, even though I had some really bad falls and I got some really nasty sores on my feet from the high heels, and these sores when I put the high heels back on were excruciating. And some people got the flu. I never missed a single show.
Never.
Other people called in, and the understudies would go on. Other people just didn't come to work that day. I never missed a show. That's my work.
That's the thing I admire about you so much. And we were talking last week with our good friend Milton Craig Neely that you and I did Full Monty with.
Yes, I love him.
Yes. And we were talking about the audience that saw us last week about how true professionals, doesn't matter if you're old school, young school, new school, true professionals don't call out. They just don't. Like if you can go on, unless you're getting the rest of the company sick, or if you have like Sally this year when she was doing Annie, she broke her leg and she went on that night. And then she realized how broke her leg was.
Well, I was told by the hospital I couldn't leave. And I said, no, you don't understand. There are 900 people that are gathering at the Music Box Theater, and they're expecting to see me play Miss Hannigan. And there is no time to get anybody else ready to do it. I do not have an understudy. So you're going to put a boot or something on me, and I'm going to get back to the theater, and I'm somehow going to do this show. And they said, but your bone is displaced. You can make it so much worse. You can be in so much pain. I said, I can't let all these children down that have come to see Annie, and I can't let their parents down who know me.
Mother Struthers.
So I went back to the theater. I don't know how I did the show. I have no idea. I don't even remember it really.
And somebody told me you did that. I think it was Kim Starling or somebody called me and told me you did that. I literally took my cell phone, threw it on the bed. I'm like, no! I was so upset.
The next morning, I was in a hospital in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and this wonderful surgeon put a titanium plate and 8 titanium screws in my leg, and I'm good to go. It's not fun with people at the airport.
Pain is temporary, pride's forever. You got up, you keep doing it. You never call out. You're on that one night or tour of Hello Dolly. And I don't know you guys, I don't know how much rehearsal you guys had with Hello Dolly so far, but whoever's playing Dolly, I'm sorry, I lost my mind who's playing it. Chime in, please. But that's a huge role. I mean, ginormous role. And the fact that you're doing that role every single night, and then you're doing all the press, and I've toured a lot. So there's a lot of press.
Yeah, I did all the press. The press did not want to speak to anyone else. I couldn't pawn off any other wonderful person in the show onto the press. I was the name in this tour, and it was me. So while everybody else was on the bus and in some shape in those seats of trying to sleep, or they were doing crossword puzzles, or they were on their phone, I was in the motorhome behind the bus doing interviews with newspapers of the upcoming cities.
Yeah.
It was exhausting.
What I also think is really phenomenal about Sally is they've given her separate, you do a tour, you do the show at night, one night like Sally's doing, the next day you get up at 6, 7 in the morning and you take off. She had to do all the interviews, so she's up in the morning on the phone, blah, the whole time. So they gave her own little bus. But she was so sweet to all the other ones, their ensemble or crew. They're like, please come on bus, stay in my bus. She wasn't a diva. She wasn't like.
It was a big, long star motorhome,
yes,
which I didn't ask for. And I was uncomfortable having it because it didn't make me look like a team player. And that's what the T and Struthers is, team. So I put everybody's name in a hat, and I would draw 5 names a day. And those were the people that could ride in the motorhome with me. And they had a sink and a refrigerator and a bathroom and a bedroom and a gigantic television set. And it was fun to share it.
It was awesome. Hey, real quick side note, my good friend and yours, Rick Ute, says you look beautiful. He just chimed in.
Rick Ute, I love Rick Ute.
Yes, Rick Ute's
he lives only like 10 blocks from my house, but because of this virus, I haven't seen him.
Rick Ute, for our audience members, he's a 6'7" gentleman, played basketball at Ohio State. And when I was living at Sally's, and he still does it, she has 2 light bulbs outside of her windows, and there's only one person
on the second floor.
On the second floor that can change those light bulbs. That's our dear friend Rick Ute. So anyway, Rick,
6'7" body out of the window, and I mean he's at full length, full stretch to undo spotlights and screw in new ones. And I like to think I'm helping by holding on to his belt, but I'm really just looking at his very fine behind.
Yeah, she's just checking out his derriere. That's all she's doing.
Yeah.
All right. So if anybody else chimes in with Hello Dolly, we got that.
Listen, I want to tell you about a Hello Dolly experience that I had that was my worst.
Awesome.
The tour was the most difficult because it was all one-nighters, but the most embarrassing, infuriating experience I had was when I was hired by a theater in Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh.
Come down and
biggest parking lot. No, world's biggest strip mall.
Yeah. Come down and do Hello Dolly, and there were no wings. There was enough room to come on from stage right, and 3 or 4 people could line up there, but there was no place to put furniture or set pieces. And in all the theaters where I have played Dolly, including on the tour, I've had anywhere from 12 to 20 steps to come down, and the big famous number at the top of Act 2 when the men in the restaurant sing the famous Hello Dolly, number 2 Dolly, as she enters the Harmonia Gardens restaurant. In Jacksonville, Florida, I had 3 steps.
No.
So I kept going down them and then going back up and going down the steps and going back up 3 steps. That's all I had.
Oh, my Lord, girl.
It was awful.
Awful. That's terrible. Quick question. You've been in 3 Broadway shows.
Yeah.
Any quick stories about those?
Lots of stories. I just saw someone sneaking in the house. Her name is Claudia, and she's come to take little Brad Kenny for a walk.
Oh, hi, Claudia.
Claudia, I've got Joe Coots on the television here.
She's my favorite.
Come look at Joe on the screen.
Say hi.
To the
Everybody,
viewers
this
in
is Claudia
Illinois, this is Claudia.
Hi, Claudia. I love you.
Nice to see you.
You too.
Bye.
Baby doll. I'll talk to you soon.
My first Broadway show was called Wally's Cafe, and it was written by the producers that had produced the Tim Conway Comedy Hour that I was a regular on. That was my second big television series. And their names are Sam Bobrick and Ron Clark. And they wrote a couple of plays, Murder at the Howard Johnsons. And then they wrote this play, a 3-character play called Wally's Cafe. And Rita Moreno and Jimmy Coco and I were the 3 people that were hired to do it. So we first played it in Boston, and then they brought it on into Broadway. And Jimmy Coco went to the doctor and was told he had a growth on his vocal cord, and it could be cancer, and he had to have surgery, and he wouldn't be able to talk for several weeks afterwards. So they brought in a friend of Jimmy's to play his part. So we were in previews for almost 3 months, waiting for Jimmy to come back so we could call the next performance the opening night. And then we closed in a week because we had a reviewer come who was a very famous guy who wrote for the newspaper in New York. And he arrived at the theater inebriated, and he staggered down the aisle of the theater and sat down on his seat, and the seat next to him was empty because he chose not to bring anyone with him. And he fell asleep for most of Act 1. So our producer went down during an intermission and sat in the other seat, and his name was Fritz Holt, and he was a really big guy like Rick Ute. And so every time he sensed that this critic was falling asleep again, nodding off in his drunkenness, Fritz would move like he was changing position in the chair and wake the guy up. So the review that came out the next morning was going to be really bad. We knew it because he didn't see the show. So
sleep.
So the producer sat us down after the show and said to Rita and Jimmy and me, I can do nothing about this and see what happens with the review. I can call the newspaper tonight and say that he arrived drunk and insist that a different reviewer come tomorrow night. What do you want me to do? And we all said, well, insist that someone else watches it tomorrow night. Well, the same reviewer came the next night, and he wasn't drunk, and he was furious. And he wrote a review that came out the next morning that said, Wally's Cafe is a play that takes place in the desert, halfway between Los Angeles and Las Vegas. And that's where this show belongs, 6 feet under. So after 3 months,
we're running forever, kids. We're running forever.
After 3 months of previews, we only stayed open for 1 week. So that was my first Broadway show. My second Broadway show was when Neil Simon rewrote The Odd Couple for 2 women. And that was a lot of fun. I did that for 1.5 years. And then my last one was when Tommy Tune redid the musical Grease, and I was out on tour with it, and they pulled me off of tour and brought me to the Broadway production to play Miss Mamie Lynch, the English teacher of Rydell High.
Wow.
And that was fun. And I was in New York at a perfect time because my daughter was a junior in high school in Los Angeles, and she wanted to look at all these Eastern Seaboard colleges. And there I was in New York City. So she came to spend part of the summer with me. And every time I had a day off, or at least just a 1-show day, I would take her on the train or a plane or a taxi cab, and we would go to all these different cities, and she would check out these colleges. So it all kind of worked out perfectly.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I remember walking with you. We were walking down Sunset. We went by, what was that bookstore right there by the
Samuel French?
Samuel French. We walked in there. Sally's like, let's walk in there. I'm like, oh, can I just get home? I don't know. We were all shopping for something. And you're like, let's go in there. So I'm like, let's go in there. And she's like looking around. I'm like sitting there. She pulls out the original Odd Couple script with her name in it. Like the original female version. I was like, that's pretty badass. I hate to swear, but that was pretty cool. And right there, I was kind of like looking at it. And you went from being my best friend, Earth Mother, to like, oh shit, you're Sally Struthers. And I'll never forget that moment. I probably never even said it to you.
Why not? Sally Struthers. I'm
Well,
just
because I'm sitting there looking at this script, I'm looking at it, I'm like, as an actor, I'm achieving to have my name in one of those things. And you just pulled it out of the thing. You're like, oh, look at that. Hand it to me. You didn't even buy it. I think you just put it right back in. So that was pretty cool. I'll never forget.
I am Robert and Margaret Struthers' daughter from Portland, Oregon.
I know.
I am Sue Struthers' sister.
I
I am Samantha Struthers Rader's mother. And I'm your Earth mother.
You're my Earth
But
mother.
I have never felt like, nor hopefully do I ever act like that I think that I'm a big deal.
No.
Because I'm just on this little tiny planet with everyone else, and it's spinning in space. And we're all here, and we're all equal, and we all have to take care of each other.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's all it is. I mean, you'll never be.
I'm going to cry now. I'm going to cry. I feel the tears coming.
Don't cry. Stop. Stop. But I always say, back up, back up, back up, back up.
Back up, back up.
Back up.
What else do you want to know, Joe? I got stories.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you right now. I'm looking on our list of questions that I wrote down to ask you. And, you know, a lot of our audience knows you from everything. Do you have any, one of my favorite stories, and you don't have to say it, you can go to a different story, was that little show called All in the Family. I hate to bring it up, but I wanted
I've got some great stories about All in the Family. I mean, the patrons that are watching this and live in Illinois, in and around Rockford area, if they're old enough, they've watched All in the Family in the original airings, or they've watched the reruns or whatever. Not sure the college students are really into it, so they're going to be bored with this part. But I mean, there was some pretty interesting stuff that happened on my 8 years of being part of that show. I mean, it was on for 11 years, I think.
Yeah, somewhere.
10 or 11 years is All in the Family, and then it was changed to the name of Archie Bunker's Place. But I spent 8 years playing Gloria Bunker Stivic, and it was a perfect cast. I don't know how they did it, but it was a perfect cast. Carol O'Connor was Archie Bunker, and he was brilliant. And Jean Stapleton played his wife. She played Edith Bunker, the dingbat, who talked in this high voice. And she didn't in person talk like that at all. But over the first year of shooting it, her voice just morphed higher and higher. And the audience just loved the voice she came up with for Edith. Then I played their daughter. And then I was married to a young man named Mike Stivic, played by Rob Reiner, whose father just passed away 2 days ago. The very famous show business veteran, Carl Reiner. And when the show came on the air and started rising to #1, and it happened just in the first half season, it went from the first airing to #1 so fast it was like we were on a rocket from NASA. And we were all feeling our oats and excited, and Norman Lear was the producer, and he was standing there on the set on a day we were rehearsing with the crew, the day before the audiences would come. And we were on a 10-minute break, and I sidled over to him. I was all of 22, 23 years old, and I said to Norman, you remember when I auditioned and it was down to the final 4 girls that were up for Gloria, and we each had to go into a room and do improvisations with Rob Reiner, who'd already been cast as Mike Stivic. And there were all these executives in the room, and you and your business partner. And was I really the funniest? Is that why I got cast as Gloria? I'm telling you right now, if you're young and you don't know this yet, don't ever go on a fishing expedition, because you got to be prepared to not like what you might catch. I was fishing for a compliment about being funny, and this is what this man said back to me. He says, well, no, Sally. Actually, the writers and I were thinking, did we want this daughter to be a mama's girl or a daddy's little girl? What could we get more humor out of and pathos? And we decided we wanted her to be daddy's little girl. And just like Carol O'Connor, you have blue eyes and a fat face. And I said, thank you. Okay. That hurt.
Oh,
ow.
On your son, blue eyes and a fat face, same thing. Oh, that's hilarious. I remember you telling me a story one time when that show he had 6 or 7 in the can before America even saw it, and they weren't sure what the reception.
Oh yeah, our director was that. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you, but we do have a time limit on our broadcast here. Our director was a wonderful man named John Rich. May he rest in peace. Almost everyone I worked with on that show has died except Rob Reiner and Norman Lear. Everybody else is gone. But anyway, John Rich said on the night that we all went home from rehearsal, it was the night the show was coming on the air for America for the very first time. We started making it in late September, early October 1970. We had 8 in the can now, and it was airing in January 1971. So as we were going out the door, he said, well, everybody have fun with whatever you're doing tonight. I'm sure you're all having parties and having people over, and everybody is going to watch it. But I just want you to know that CBS has decided to man all of their affiliates across the country with extra operators to take all the angry phone calls. And so we don't know if in the morning whether or not we're going to have a job still. If the peasants are storm the Bastille, we're out of a job.
Wow.
And so come here tomorrow for rehearsal, but we might be telling you that it's the end. Wow. So it was bittersweet to watch the first one on the air because we didn't know if we were having a job the next day. So we all went back to rehearsal the next day, one of the few days I wasn't late. And they sat us down, and Norman Lynn came in and he says, well, he said they got a lot of phone calls last night, but 90% of them were people saying, what was that? Is that going to be back on again? We love that. So we knew we had a job. We didn't know yet where it was going to take us. None of us had a crystal ball. We didn't know we would rise to number 1 and stay there, and that we would all win Emmys, and that it would give me a chance to be known by the public so that I could get hired to do theater jobs easier, because the producers see me as a ticket seller. If I hadn't been on All in the Family, I don't think I would have been allowed to do as much theater as I've done. So it's nothing but winning and winning and winning and winning. I'm so fortunate.
Struthers, you're so damn talented. You're so genius. All in the Family comes or not, it doesn't matter. Something else would have followed you. You're so good. You're so talented, and you have such an open heart. And you take the entire universe, whether it's entertainment or just life in general, and you let it come to you. So no matter what was going to happen to you, success was always going to follow you, always.
Well, Joe, you didn't know me when I was a little girl, but I was around my mother.
Brat, but
no, I wasn't. My sister was the brat. But when I was listening to my mom as I started acting and getting known, and my mom would be with me, and someone would say to my mom in front of me, what was Sally like when she was little? And my mom, who was brilliant and single-handedly helped my father get through medical school, would speak English incorrectly to make her point. She would say, well, Sally was born with funny.
Yeah, it's true.
And that was my MO from the time I was 2, when I could put a few sentences together and I was upright for the most part.
Yeah.
My entire aim in life was to make people laugh. And back then in the 50s, television sets weren't just the television, they were set into a big console. And in that console on the end might be a record player, and on the other end might be a liquor cabinet, but it was this big wooden thing 5 or 6 feet long. And when the TV would break down, or as my mother would say, the TV's on the fritz, the TV repairman would come and he would take out the screen and the innards with all the tubes and wires, and he'd take it to his shop to work on. And I would be left with a box with a hole in it. And I would climb in there with puppets and products. And when my sister or mother walked through the room, I do commercials and I do shows. I just wanted them to laugh.
And then it's funny, you're inside a TV box, and then years later, multi-million people are watching you through a TV box.
In the box. Nobody's ever said that before. That is ironic. That's funny. Listen, Jean Stapleton, who played Edith Bunker in All in the Family, was very bright. She was raised by a mother in New York City. Her mother was an opera singer. Jean was so bright, and so it was delicious to see her play this dingbat of a woman. So one day we're in rehearsal hall, and she's over there and she's reading the Los Angeles Times classified section. People are having coffee and talking to one another. I'm looking at her because I can see she's getting hot under the collar. First of all, I'm thinking, why is she looking for a job? She's got one on a major television series and she's looking in the class. Maybe she's looking for a car or something. So I see her going, oh. So I go over to her and I say, Jean, what's wrong? And she holds the newspaper to me and she said, would you look at this? This car wash is advertising for Polish men. And I said, Jean, that's polish. Honey, that's polish. She's the one that told me that the theater would always come back. Because she started in theater in New York. She was on Broadway, in Bell Ringing. She had quite a Broadway career going before she ever came to television. And she told me that she knew I started in theater. And she said, no matter what happens with the crazy, fickle television and movie people, you will always be welcomed back to the theater.
Hey, that story reminds me a little bit. The other night we were talking to Milton Craig Neely, and Milton was our horse for numerous times in Full Monty, but Milton was the original swing on Dreamgirls back in the 70s. So when his agent called him and said, hey, you just got hired in Dreamgirls. And he was like, what? They said there's a swing. Well, he didn't know what a swing meant. He thought he literally was going to be swinging above the stage. Like filling in or like dropping down or coming into a dream sequence. Or being like, like I joked and I said, you'd be like drag queen Effie going up in the air as a swing. Because he done, he's a Tumblr guy too. So it kind of reminds me of how funny, you take things out of the box and out of context. And you're so young, you don't know the damn difference. I'll never forget that. So.
Well, listen, I'm so programmed to think in theater terms that when my daughter was in an elementary school up in Bel Air, a private school called the John Thomas Dye School for children from kindergarten through 6th grade. And the headmaster of the school called me one day and said, Sally, I'd like you to come into my office. I'd like to talk to you about a program that we're doing. And I heard program. So I got so excited that he was calling the parent who actually was in show business, and he was going to let me help out with a program. And I was sitting there a good 30 minutes before I realized that it was a financial program and he was asking for money.
Wow.
It wasn't about a show at all, but I heard program.
Wow. That's hilarious.
I felt so stupid.
Hey, on our list here, I'm going to ask you a few more, but I want to get one more done about Dolly, and then we can move on to the important stuff like us. What advice would you give to the girl or to the woman playing Dolly in our production of Hello, Dolly? Any advice? Or any thoughts or anything that you found?
I'm coming up with it. The advice is,
I went off script here, so I apologize, but
that's all right. If you have fun with playing Dolly Levi, if you can find in the center of your being the fun of this woman, you will automatically radiate something that makes the audience have fun. Yeah. I know it's a huge part, and I know that there are moments that are difficult in it, but if you realize that the audience came to the theater for a good time, and you remember that Dolly Levi is a really fun, wacky character. I mean, listen, if what's the matter? She's famous for playing Dolly.
Sally Struthers.
No, Carol Channing. If Carol Channing, who wasn't much of an actress, could play Dolly Levi, then it's kind of actor proof. So you've just got to have a twinkle in your eye.
Jennifer Meyer is the name of the lady playing our Hello Dolly.
Jennifer Meyer. I love your name.
That says, I am listening.
Jennifer Meyer, just remember to have fun, because that's why the waiters sing to her, because she's a fun woman, and it hasn't been back to the Harmonia Gardens in years. But she comes back and they all remember her because she's fun. And she's so fun that people on the street will take advice from her. She has cards she passes out at the top of the show to everyone. She knows a little bit about everything. Of course, she's doing this to survive, but there's something so fun about her. People listen.
It's awesome.
That's all I can say is make it fun.
Make it fun. Make it fun. Hey, looking through our notes here. Favorite, well, this is a loaded question, but favorite actress besides Joe Coots, who's your favorite performer you've ever worked with?
Oh, well.
And then after you get done with that,
yes,
I want you to give me the Cliff Note version of you meeting Gregory Peck. That's it.
Well, that's funny you mentioned Gregory Peck because my favorite actor, and again, the young people that are working at Starlight Theater right now, probably most of them don't know who Gregory Peck was.
If they don't, they need to do some homework because he was a
magnificent actor, and he was tall and handsome with a very deep voice and very sweet. And I think the most famous role he played was Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird. And I think that's when I fell in love with him when I saw that movie.
Me too. We had to do that in school.
And did you do To Kill a Mockingbird on stage?
No, we had to watch it, learn everything from it, watch it again.
Yeah. It was very socially conscious,
Jennifer Meyer Sally goes, yes, thank you. I am now crying for real. Best gift ever.
Oh, Jennifer, I wish I could get on a plane and come see you and sit in the audience with Joe, but I'm 73 years old the end of this month, and I don't have a good heart or good lungs, and I just can't get exposed to the virus, or I'd come there in a heartbeat so that I can be with my son.
Good news is the theater's done for this year. We come out next year. They're going to do it next year.
I'm coming to see you, Jennifer. I'm coming to see you.
Coots' house.
Okay, so Gregory Peck, I've always loved him. He was my heartthrob. He was just, if I could be a man who was an actor, who wouldn't want to be Gregory Peck? So my career started out in television commercials, and then it moved on to television series. And then I eventually did a few films, but never had the opportunity to run into him anywhere. And one night I was with a friend, and we went to this woo-woo fancy, it doesn't even print its telephone number in the phone book restaurant. You had to know somebody that had the phone number to go. So we went. It was raining, which it doesn't happen very often in Los Angeles. So the car parkers took the car, and we ran in. We're sitting looking at the menu, and my friend kicks me under the table. She says, look way across the restaurant over against the wall. Is that Gregory Peck? And I went, what? Oh my God, it's Gregory Peck. And he was sitting with his beautiful wife, Veronique, and he was sitting with Frank Sinatra's daughter, Nancy Sinatra, made famous that song called These Boots Are Made for Walking. And that's just what I'll do. One of these days, these boots are going to walk all over you. And she's there with some guy, and they're at this table, and I said, oh my God. So I called the waiter over, and I said, is that Mr. Peck over there? And he said, yes. And I said, what is the best champagne you have? And he said, well, we've got a few. I said, I want the most expensive bottle. I don't care what it costs. I want you to take it to the table. And do you have a piece of paper? I could write him a note. So I wrote him a note telling him about how I always loved him, and I didn't want anybody else to feel uncomfortable. And I said, how exciting to see your beautiful wife, Veronique, and Miss Sinatra, who I love, and I can't remember who the other guy was, but he had a name too. So I put them all in the notes so they wouldn't get their feelings hurt. And now I watch the waiter, and the waiter goes over there, and I'm trying not to look, but I'm looking, and I see him put down the cylinder with the legs, and he got the thing over his arm, and he hands the note to Gregory Peck, and I'm like, oh my God, my heart was pounding out of my chest. And he said to the waiter, I could read his lips. He said, the waiter, where is she? And the waiter pointed over me, and I went, oh my God. And Gregory Peck turned around in his chair, and he waved at me, and he blew me a kiss. And I grabbed the kiss and put it on my heart, and he turned back around to his friends. And I think a meal came to me. I'm not sure I ate it. I was stunned, and now that it was time to go, and I made sure that I never looked over there again. I didn't want to be caught staring at the table. All I know is I would go through life remembering that Gregory Peck shot a hand kiss off to me across the room. So we pay for our meal. I pay for the champagne. Oh my God, did I pay for that champagne? But it was Gregory Peck. So I'm at the restaurant, which has got an awning about as big as my arm. So we're plastered up against the restaurant because people don't need awnings in California because outside of restaurants because it doesn't rain, but it was raining this night. So we didn't have umbrellas or anything, and we're waiting for them to bring the car around. And all of a sudden, an umbrella magically appears over me. And I turn and I look, and it's Gregory Peck. He has an umbrella, and he's holding it over my head. And he stands there and makes small talk with me until the car is brought around. I can't remember everything, but I remember he said, "My wife and I enjoy you on All in the Family." And I looked at him and I said, "I can't believe that you know who I am because I've known who you are my whole life. And I like you."
Oh, that is.
He held an umbrella over me.
Oh, wow.
He was a gentleman besides being so beautiful to look at and such a wonderful actor. Oh, and the other person I always loved since I was watching movies was an actress. I hope you all know who this was, Ruth Gordon. And I got cast in a movie of the week for CBS called The Great Houdinis. And Paul Michael Glaser was on this TV series called The Mod Squad. And he was playing Harry Houdini. And I got cast as this like Bess Houdini because Harry Houdini was a Jewish man. He married a Catholic woman. And then Ruth Gordon was hired to play Mrs. Houdini, Harry's mother. So I got to work with her on this movie for a month. And we stayed in touch. And when I got my first show on Broadway, Wally's Cafe, and my daughter was not even 2 yet, I said, "Where am I going to stay? Where am I going to stay?" And I was talking to Ruth Gordon via letters. I mean, we didn't have cell phones back then. You couldn't text, you couldn't email. And she said, "Oh, well, you know, go." She was married to a writer named Garson Kanan. And she said, Garson and I, we have another place that we don't stay in. It's wonderful. It's on Turtle Bay. And it's a real nice place. It's got a nice communal backyard. I think you'll like it. You could stay there. Well, it was this beautiful brownstone. And my next door neighbors, to my right, Katharine Hepburn, to my left, Stephen Sondheim.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's insane.
So I ran into Ruth Gordon a few years later outside of a beauty shop in Beverly Hills called Menage a Trois, which is an interesting name.
Yeah.
And I asked the owners why they named it that because it was 2 Jewish guys and a Japanese woman. They said, "Well, what were we going to call it? 2 Jews and a Jap?" So zone of safety. So
Strauss, you're killing me.
So she comes out of the beauty shop. Ruth, I was like, "Sally, good to see you, honey. You good?" I said, "Yeah, what are you doing?" She said, "Well, I'm here in Los Angeles. I'm trying to get some money to produce this play I wrote." I said, "Tell me about your play." She says, "It's got 49 characters in it. And it's a big casting job and it's going to take a lot of money to produce." I said, maybe it wouldn't be so hard to produce if you didn't write a play with 49 people in it. Why did you put so many people in your play?" She said, "I got a lot of friends out of work." I loved her for that.
It's true.
Those were my 2 favorite actors. They're both gone, but I carry them around in my heart, and I have a portrait of Ruth Gordon in my bedroom, and it faces my bed so that every morning when I sit up, there she is.
Oh, Sal, that is...
I can't have a picture of Gregory Peck in my room or I'd never go to sleep. But I got Ruth Gordon.
Go to sleep happy, at least.
Is our hour up?
Yes, real quick, then we're out of here. So,
No, it's not that I want to be out of here. It's just that I feel like I've talked forever. I feel like I have mouth diarrhea.
I think our audience is not worried about our time, but
okay.
I just want to hit one more thing on my list because I knew this was going to be the case of you and I get together and it takes forever. So
Yeah.
real quick, men or less, any advice you have to a young up and coming actor or actress that wants to get in the business? My advice is don't do it. But what's your advice?
My advice is if you cannot picture yourself doing anything else in life,
Agreed.
then go for it. But
Yes.
there is no such thing as luck. It is called preparation meeting opportunity.
I taught you that.
So you have to be prepared. And the only way you can be prepared is to study. Study when you're in school and then take classes when you're outside of school. And
100%.
learn all the aspects to create an appreciation in your heart and soul for the people that are doing the other jobs that make an entire show work. And then when the opportunity presents itself with your preparation, you probably do a pretty good job, an audition, whatever it is you're doing, and you stand a good chance of getting hired. But if you blow it and walk in and don't know what you're doing and don't know the terms and don't know how to read lines out loud to somebody or memorize something really quickly and go in and do it for people, then you're going to blow it. You got to be prepared.
Yeah. Sally taught me that a long time ago. Sally used to help me tape auditions in LA all the time. And she was right. When we all said this too, preparation
meeting opportunity
equals luck. That's it.
Yeah.
Put your oar in the water and keep rowing the boat, right? Row the boat.
Row the boat.
Well, Struthers, I love you so much. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I know this was not easy for you.
Listen, I want to tell you something, all of you. The 4th of July is coming up in 3 days.
America's birthday.
And my Mother Struthers, used to write little ditties and little sayings. She wrote songs. And this is what she wrote for the 4th of July. Because, people party a lot on St. Patrick's Day and on the 4th of July. This is what she wrote. If you go forth with a 5th on the 4th, you may not come forth on the 5th. That was my mom.
I wish I was there to punch you right now. That's hilarious.
Ow!
Ow! Boom. All right, Struz, I love you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love you to death.
For being a moderator, because you're a great interviewee as well. I mean, it's really more difficult to be the person that keeps the whole thing rolling than it is to be the one being asked the questions. You stepped back and you shone the light on me today, my little boy. I love you.
I love you too, baby doll. We'll talk smooth soon. Thank you, Starlight, for checking in with us. Thank you, Sally Struthers, American Icon. Thank you, everybody. God bless you and have a very safe, very happy.
Please wear a mask. Please respect others and put a mask on, please.
These numbers are going up. So please, everybody, be safe and not stupid.